Get ready for the Super Bowl with Troy Aikman. We're going to talk about, is there anything that actually makes Patrick Mahomes uncomfortable? That, the Eagles side of things, as you would expect before the Super Bowl. Some other cool stuff on just Troy doing his job, talking about somebody else. NBA trade deadline. I did not do anything on Thursday, so here you go. Jimmy Butler to the Warriors, the Butler dilemma, the KD dilemma that's lingering, Mark Williams, DeAndre Hunter, a couple of the other big moves, and I spent the day at a museum, and we've got life advice. We're going to do a lot of stuff today, but since I had like the normal week this week, even with the trade deadline yesterday, I just want to start with the trade deadline stuff because we still had some news and some overall thoughts here. The funny thing is being down in New Orleans and leading up to the Super Bowl, how many nights everybody is still talking about Luka. Again, I've never experienced anything like this. A Super Bowl, maybe it's with the Chiefs Eagles. People are just waiting for the game. Not that this is the best polling of this is what I heard, but every single person I've run into wants to talk about the Luka Doncic trade. And there's some other pieces, but let's talk about the news. Jimmy Butler to Golden State. So I always talk about waiting for perfect and how that's probably not the best plan, especially in basketball, when you see these trades and then the trade gets done and you go, well, does it make him a championship contender? And the first thing I would usually ask after that question is, was there a deal the team turned down that was going to make him a championship contender? And I think the Jimmy Butler acquisition for Golden State is a perfect example of that. Now, granted, maybe there was a better deal out there. I would have rather had Durant with Golden State. There's a Durant part of this conversation that's definitely interesting. Not to do the legacy updates here, but with Durant, a player I've really liked, a personality that I think when he lets it shine through feels very authentic in comparison to other high-profile athletes. But I was wondering, when's Durant happy? Where has he been happy? Maybe in the beginning of the OKC years, certainly not at the end. Golden State, a couple rings, couldn't wait to get out of there. Goes to Brooklyn, thinks it's going to be happy with Kyrie. That ends pretty quickly. Has a 4-year extension, asks for the front office and coaching staff to be fired before the summer. They don't do that. He comes back and plays. He wants out, goes to Phoenix, and here we are all over again. But so unhappy with his Golden State experience that he actually didn't want to leave Phoenix. I was thinking about Kyrie a little bit because he also has a few I'm not happy hits on his resume. And, when I started thinking about the two players, I was like, is there a possibility that Kyrie's had more I'm happy basketball moments than even Durant has had? Which is something that I don't know that anybody would have really been able to argue. But there's also a fact that we're probably going to go through this with Durant again at some point because it's not solved. But Golden State had a trade for Kevin Durant. And Durant didn't want to go. So then you move on to Jimmy Butler. I feel like Durant's the better fit basketball-wise with Golden State because we've already seen him do it. But at the same time, when I watch Golden State now and I think about their design of what they're trying to do offensively with really only Steph being a guy you can rely on every single night, I have to admit that Golden State perfection with everybody moving, everybody being complimentary, not having ball stoppers, it doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, it does with Steph because he's constantly moving off the ball. It's what makes him so great. But this free-flowing thing with him and Clay flying off of screens, re-screening for each other, and then having all the shooting all over the place. And why Durant was such a great fit for them is that he doesn't necessarily stop the basketball the way a Jimmy Butler would. I'm like, is that really what Durant still is? Is that what Golden State is anymore? And I think the answer is no. I mean, Durant's still terrific. He's an all-NBA caliber player. People voted him as an all-star starter. He still puts up massive numbers. But I feel like there are moments with him with Phoenix where it's just kind of waiting around to see what shot is available for him in a way that just doesn't feel as, granted, he's older, so it's not peak Durant. But I think you understand what I'm saying. Moments where he's floating a little bit more as Booker is trying to figure out how to break down whatever defense they're throwing at him. I just think there's a lot of Booker conversation about, is it that he's declining or is being tasked with trying to solve everything that's happening to Phoenix? And then Durant can kind of be off to the side waiting for some sort of release. And he's such a great shooter. It doesn't mean you have to run a play for the guy. So when I started thinking about Durant's fit with Golden State now, I'm like, you might be talking about ancient history for both the player and the team's concept. So it may be irrelevant that Jimmy Butler is more of a ball-stopping, attacking player. He gets it out 15, 17 feet. He's on the wing. He's kind of thinking about what he wants to do. Does that slow them down? I think it's one of the reasons why when Paul George was available during peak Golden State years, it was like, is he actually as good of a fit with what they want to do? Well, now it doesn't really matter because I think Butler is a bit more of a ball stopper. But you know what Butler is? At his best, a much better second offensive option, a second offensive creator beyond what they've had all season long. So when you look at Butler's ordeal throughout all of this, the Butler saga here from Miami until now, it's also a good reminder of like what you are willing to do. And I think that applies to kind of everybody because you can talk yourself into what you think you're going to do, right? Convince yourself that this is all I'm doing. It's like, you sure about that? And maybe it's more about convincing everybody else to believe that the only thing you're willing to do is to go to Phoenix. Windhorst had an awesome report where he said, quote, it was basically, I'm just kind of using the word was admirable. He's like, this is almost admirable what Jimmy Butler is doing, turning down trade scenarios to other teams, saying, if you trade for me, I am not going to sign a contract extension because he wanted Phoenix so badly. But then, like almost everybody, you're faced with your options. And you can be convinced that you would only do one thing, in this case, Butler to Phoenix. And yet when it comes down to it, you're like, or I'll just do this. Because Butler had two options: stay with Miami, continue to be suspended, lose money. He could opt out of the $50 million player option this summer, be a free agent when you're in your mid-30s and your likability is at an all-time low, and be like, who wants to sign me as a free agent? Or you also could have opted in, too, if you wanted to try to make it even worse. Or you accept the trade to Golden State, where he did opt out of the player option, but he gets a 2-year extension at $112.5 million. So facing those scenarios, I'm like, hey, Jimmy, you're not going to get Phoenix, but here's what's on the table. Like, or you can stay in Miami and keep losing money with no clear future. Yeah, you know what? I think I will go to Golden State. You know what? I've changed my mind. Golden State, I'd probably rather they didn't do this. They didn't give up much. It's probably smart to get the first round pick that they're giving up here, top 10 protected in 25, just to get that draft debt out of the way now. It's not like, they're going to have the 11th pick with Butler if things kind of work out. Nobody's picking him for a title. I think that'd be a little ridiculous. But if you think about what's going out versus what's coming in, just the asset part of this, it makes a lot of sense. And Miami is able to salvage something from this and get a first. The market's not going to be very good when you're trading a player that's disgruntled everywhere he's gone, is older, doesn't play a lot, and is also telling all of these teams, I don't want to go there. Like, it's tough to sign off on that, to be the general manager and go to your owner and say, no, this will be a good idea. So I think it's a good idea for now because it makes Golden State better. And again, it was probably the only real option, especially once Durant says, I don't want to come back. But I am a little worried about, like, say, 26, 27. Butler has a year left on his deal, whether it's that summer, whether it's going into that trade deadline. Steph will be, depending on when it happens, he turns 37 in March, so say 37, 38. Golden State can't figure out the other pieces around it. It could get really ugly. And even though you think it's a win for Golden State and Steph today, it could be a really ugly stretch if Butler turns back into Butler. And you're like, now Steph is dealing with this towards the very end of his career, where he's still a very viable basketball player. So that scares me a little bit. The history of Jimmy and the math on the numbers would scare the shit out of me. The Phoenix part, let's go. Like, I understand. Once they did the Beal deal, really once they did the Durant deal, they were all in. So every move since then is, we're already all in. Like, we can't start going the other way on all this stuff. Booker was never available. I think it's kind of funny, just the scenario of Beal being like, what are you guys doing? You making phone calls? Oh, really? You guys exploring trades? Yeah, actually, I don't want to go anywhere. Just like I was content to be in Washington the entire time. Like, you think this is bad? You're going to take me off the bench? I hung with the Wizards for like a decade, man, to get that 5-year extension. I'm good. I can just hang here the entire time. But the fear and the entire reason why Durant was even available and all this stuff is because Phoenix is so all in and they're worried about Durant on an expiring contract next year. The Durant rumblings go back to last summer where you were hearing he wanted to go to Houston. So this stuff is going to start all over again. And they're thinking like, well, if we give Jimmy the extension, is that more certainty than an expiring Kevin Durant? You know, imagine having that conversation with ownership. That can't be a lot of fun. But I doubt next year will be a year free of any of the Durant speculation. A couple other trades that I want to touch on. I love the DeAndre Hunter deal for Cleveland. Asset-wise, it's not a ton that they're giving up. LeVert, which I think they had no issue moving on from. Niang, who is a really serviceable role guy that plays on winning teams. The 3 seconds and then a swap. The swap's not going to happen this year. I don't know if it happens in 28. The key here is the money that Hunter's owed. He's $21 million this year, then 23, then 25 million. The funny thing for Hunter when that deal was done, because I've always kind of liked Hunter going back to the draft, the size, the shooting. I think he's a little bit better on the dribble than we can see. But when you're playing with Trey, you're just stuck in the corner. When you're playing with DeJounte and Trey, you're definitely stuck in the corner. But that's a funny contract in that it went from that's terrible to, hey, that's a pretty good number for a guy that's been as productive as him. Now, there's a tax question there with Cleveland long term, where going into next year, I think they're going to have 10 players under contract. And they're going to be 20 million projection right now over the tax for the 25-26 season. But if you're in that win now window, which Cleveland is, it's a credit to the ownership. Like, hey, we'll worry about the rest of that stuff later. They have the other extensions that they have to start worrying about. But when you watch Cleveland play Boston, and it's not just because Boston won the other night against them, look at the defensive matchups. They desperately needed some kind of wing option that they felt good about. So if you look at the start of the game and then how it plays out throughout it, like Tatum has Mobley on him, which at times you feel like Mobley is as good as he is defensively. Is that a waste of his abilities? Then you got to think about the assignments and how they change when Allen and Mobley are split up. Strus is on Jaylen Brown. Garland is on Derek White. Mitchell is on Drew, and then you put Allen on Porzingis for the Celtics' normal starting five. But there are minutes as the rotations, sub in and sub out, where you'll see Strus on Tatum. So, they feel like Strus is their best wing option. And Strus may be their best spacing option, depending on how a playoff game is playing out. But the fact that they have Hunter, Strus, I think, flies off the screens a little bit more, maybe a little quicker on the catch and shoot and getting into his three. So Hunter's three-point shooting numbers are really good. But Hunter, at least, look, I'm not telling you he's Lou Dort here, but it's just a far better wing option if Cleveland is facing Boston in the playoffs. And I think that's the biggest motivation behind all of this stuff. Kevin Pelton at ESPN had a really good number, too. When you look at the efficiency and the true shooting improvement for Hunter, it's really not so much about just becoming a better shooter. It's becoming a better decision maker on which shots he wants to take. Here's the number. 2-pointers outside of the paint, 22-23. He took 212. He took 286 threes. This season, 2-pointers outside of the paint, 101 going into this week. At threes, 247. So that's why the true shooting percentage is up, and that's why you've seen a big improvement for him. And even with that's the kind of transaction where I think a lot of owners go like, yeah, I know we need it, and I know we're in our window, but man, we could have that tax bill. We're still going to have other roster spots. Credit Cleveland for just saying, screw it. The time is right now. The Mark Williams deal. I cannot believe that Charlotte got the swap and Dallas didn't. I know the swap is probably not going to relay to Charlotte. It's almost like impossible that it'll actually happen. I know Windhorst had reported that the Lakers went to Dallas and said, if you want the other first, we have to talk to Luka about a possible extension. Dallas, again, secrecy being the priority, not maximizing value for the most unlikely trade in NBA history. No, we just need to keep it. We don't need as much. We just want it to be a secret. I also think it's funny, too, when they keep talking about the Kyrie timeline. It's like, well, if Ant were available, is he too young to play with Kyrie? You're like, yeah, he's too young. We need somebody north of 30 because Kyrie, that's how you have to do it. All right. I could still talk about the Luka trade all day. So it's obviously a need because the Lakers are rolling out a team with Jackson Hayes as the starting center, and that's just not going to work for anybody. Even playing teams would be like, we can't upgrade this a little bit. So I like Mark Williams a lot at Duke. I loved how active he was, his athleticism. It's probably not entirely fair to look at him right now and say this is the finished product because the guy has missed 105 of 211 career games. He is a really good lob threat, which is exactly what Luka needs. It's why Gafford's field goal percentage and the Lively stuff, there's more to Lively, and I've always kind of liked Gafford, but trying to defend Luka on those lobs with his size, like, good luck. So that makes sense. But the Williams defensive numbers are alarmingly bad. Like, at the rim, he's allowing 68% field goal percentage conversion. AD was at like 58%. There's numbers that tell you Williams is really low. I think the biggest thing in watching Williams, and I don't know if it's just a big guy with the health issues and he'll be fine and he'll figure it out and he'll get back to being what we thought at Duke, this active defensive player. But he just doesn't want to move a lot on defense. That's the alarming part. Maybe that's the best part, is that it's totally fixable. It's not his instincts. It's not the health thing. It's just, hey, I'm in Charlotte and I'm just getting back here. But there's a lot of stuff with him where you just think he's not all that interested in being positioned. So maybe with LA, maybe with guys like LeBron, not that he's going to like, hey, Luka's been my defensive mentor, but you get the point. The stakes are raised. More eyes are on you. You're worried about that next contract. A team is invested in you here. They've invested Dalton Connect, who we can talk about his defense, but even though he's 38 as a rookie, Connect was an incredibly efficient shooter and also like more than just a shooter. So these are like real assets they're moving out for somebody they hope fix their center problems, which are evident. But that defense has to improve dramatically. The lobs are cool. The defense is probably more important. This is cool. We've done this in the past. It's always a great visit when we get Troy Aikman, Super Bowl winner, and, of course, with ESPN and 8 Beer. I wanted some updates on that. He's rocking the hat today. Good to see you, man. Can't wait for you to get here. I'll be leaving.
What's that?
I'll be leaving. I don't think I've ever stayed. I think Saturday's like my limit, although it's fine. You get older and you kind of know the moves.
Yeah, I don't, unless I'm calling the game, of course, but I don't stay for the game either. I'll pop in and pop out.
I was thinking about this, and maybe I'll start here with it. It's kind of reverse of what my original plan was, but the NFL honors thing was last night. I have a lot of friends that either, whether they played or work in NFL media or whatever, and it's just a huge, it's like the Oscars for the league. And you can get kind of day to day when you're playing, right? And thinking about the importance, like the short term stuff of it. But then when I see like the players that win and it's kind of like a celebration, a reminder of how special their career was. And then I think of like these great players that never had that chance and they're still in a suit there with their wives. Did you ever even, like, when you would go to those things, would it ever even dawn on you like, man, this would have sucked to never win one of these things?
Not at one of those events, but I've thought often that usually it's around this time of year when the Super Bowl is about to happen that I feel fortunate and feel blessed to have won a Super Bowl and then win multiple ones. But I feel bad for the guys. The guy who comes to mind is Dan Marino, but there's others. I mean, that have contributed a ton to the history of the NFL. And although Dan played in a Super Bowl, he didn't win one. So he didn't get to walk off the field and really feel what it meant to be a champion, and there's a lot of others that, obviously aren't as well known as Dan Marino, but have given a lot to the NFL that haven't experienced that or haven't even gotten to the Super Bowl. And for those players, I hate that because it is the pinnacle of our sport, and to have given so much of yourself and so much of your life and your career and enhancing what the NFL is today and not get to experience the ultimate victory. I hate it for those players.
Yeah, I hate it for some of them, and I don't even know them, right? Know them the way you do. And, you can sit here and maybe people outside of the sports world would think we're insane for thinking like, would it be this empty part of your life? You're like, okay, well, give me a break. Like, this is a game. It's like, no, but to your point, it isn't. This is your life. This is your life's work. And when I look at these events and see everybody celebrating and everybody shaking hands. Like I think it would be so hard to play 15 years, especially at that position, and be one of the greats, be in the Hall of Fame, and be shaking hands with another guy who's got like 2 or 3 rings. We're just like, God. And you could pretend it's not a big deal, but I think it's just a little reminder in this week of like what didn't happen for you.
Yeah, and I think I think most players that did have those kinds of careers that didn't win a Super Bowl, the ones I've come across, they're the first ones to admit that, yeah, it's a little empty, that they carry that with them, and it's a little bit for me. In college, I lost to USC while I was at UCLA, both years that I was the starter, for an opportunity to advance to the Rose Bowl. And so that's my biggest regret athletically, is that I failed to win either of those games and failed to take my team to a Rose Bowl. So, on one hand, I kind of get it, so I have this part of me from college that says, oh man, I wasn't able to get it done, or I didn't get to experience the ultimate, of having played in the Pac-10 at the time. So I get it. But with all that said, I mean, this is a great week. It's 2 great teams. Looking forward to it. And obviously all of us former players, we kind of converge on the city each year and do some events and have a good time running into one another.
Yeah, I think that's the special thing. And people can understand the cliche of fraternity, the camaraderie, and all that stuff. But like seeing everybody every year, and all the years that I've been coming to this, and just having that moment where you just kind of get to feel special. And even if it's just a bit of an ego boost, like it's just a cool thing. It's a great way to kind of remind yourself what all that sacrifice was for. And ultimately, the stuff you just can't understand. I mean, I think there's a lot of parallels in life, but like there's no way you can understand the magnitude of what your mark on history is in this league while you're playing. Like you can't understand it. And this week is a reminder.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a reminder of why we do play the game. And I believe that wholeheartedly, that, every team, when you start up in the OTAs in the off season, you go through training camp, you go through the regular season, it's all for one thing, and that's to play in this game and then win this game. And if you're the one who doesn't win, there's no solace in that, and it's a big letdown. So one of these teams, regardless of how great their year has been, and they've both been great seasons to have gotten this far, someone's going to walk away from this game being very disappointed. And I don't want to say we'll feel that the season was a failure, but they'll feel that they didn't quite live up to what their expectations were. So the pageantry and the excitement around this game has only grown over the years. It's when you go back to Super Bowl 1 and 2 in the early years, and heck, probably even the years when I was playing, and you look at how far it's come and where we are today, it's become quite a spectacle. And I am all in favor of making Monday after the Super Bowl a national holiday.
Yeah, no, I don't. I'm not against it. I mean, who knows? There's a lot of stuff flying around with bills being proposed, so maybe now is the time.
Yeah, really.
Let's talk about the game. Who are you picking?
If I had to pick, which I typically don't, I would go with Kansas City, just because of what they've accomplished up to this point, but also the year that they've had and being able to win all these one-score games. I mean, they've just found ways to win, and they've found ways to win in games that looked improbable, that they just were not going to be able to get it done, and yet they have. And we've seen them too many times on this stage find a way to get it done as well. So not taking anything away from Philadelphia. I think on paper they're probably the better team, but you got to go play it. And nobody's playing it better right now than what Patrick Mahomes is in Kansas City. And so until proven otherwise, I'll stick with the champions.
Yeah, I have a hard time picking against Mahomes. I did it against Buffalo. I'm just like, hey, let me be different. Let me see if Allen can get this done. And granted, it was another really close game, a competitive game, but it's just a different level when you think about all the games, as you point to, with Kansas City this season, where you're like, they won that one. Like, is this a flawed team? Is it going to catch up to them? And then even last year with the offensive numbers not being what you'd expect with this offense, and just turn the page and then into the playoffs. It's a brutal spot. I want to talk about the dynamic of Reed and Mahomes. but let's go back to kind of your playing days. So you had played, what, 2 seasons, then Norv Turner came in, I think in 91. Is that
That's
accurate?
right. Yeah.
Okay. We can talk about like continuity. And if you're an owner in a front office, you'd be like, we want continuity. It's like, well, you don't get that unless you're winning because you want to keep everybody around. If you're not winning, you're just going to keep firing everybody. The Chiefs have that kind of continuity. What was it like for you to build on a relationship with Norv and then having the success where you just understood each other because it wasn't like you were changing systems every 2 years, like seems like it happens with so many quarterbacks?
Well, I think Norv coming in really changed the trajectory of my career, but he also did the same for Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin and Jay Novacek and everyone that was a part of that offense. Prior to Norv coming in, there were 28 teams in the league, and in 1990 we were 28th in the NFL. We were the worst offense in football, and if we had continued down the road we had my first 2 years in 91, we would have been the worst offense in football third year. So I think coaching matters. Players certainly matter as well. You've got to have both. And when Norv came in, he brought a system that really allowed us to maximize our abilities, and it was just a natural fit. So the first year we were a top 10 offense. And then we were top 5 the next 2 years and won Super Bowls. And then Ernie Zampese came in, who really taught the offense to Norv Turner. So we continued because Norv got the Washington head coaching job. So, when you are a good team, you do lose coaches. So you talk about continuity. We saw it this year with the Detroit Lions. When you play really well, you're going to lose coordinators. And we've seen it with the Los Angeles Rams over the years, with Sean McVay and all of the assistants that they've lost. But being able to replace those guys and it is important. And when you're able as a quarterback to stay within the same offense, you take Peyton Manning, for instance, even though he changed teams, he ran the same offense his entire career. Brett Favre ran the same offense his entire career. I mean, that's a real luxury. And then you look at others and seemingly they're playing within a new offensive system or with a new play caller every season, and that's Jalen Hurts. I mean, he hasn't hardly had back-to-back play callers since high school. So that's all a big part of it. And when you find a good one and they're able to stick around for a while, it's a really positive thing.
On the teammate front, though, and that was a great answer, but I'm also wondering, it must be something special to just understand the tendencies of, especially like a Novacek or an Irvin or even like a Harper, where you're like, I know, like he knows where I want to throw this against this coverage. So we may not have the call when we come out, but like the tendency is that this is kind of, we're on the same page in these moments because we've repped it so many times, because I know exactly like where he wants the ball. It just feels like Mahomes, even though he's had so many different receivers, we see it with Kelsey all the time, some of the zone stuff where you're like, they don't even have to really understand the route. Like they just know what they're going to do with each other. Having that kind of understanding, like how big of an advantage is that over a defense?
Well, for Kansas City, it's a huge advantage because you could take Andy Reid could go somewhere else and want to do the same things that Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are doing, and more than likely would not be able to pull that off. And I think that is part of Andy Reid's greatness, that when you look at what Kansas City's doing with Mahomes, it's different than what he did in Philadelphia with Donovan McNabb or other quarterbacks that he had. I think Andy does as good a job as anyone of really taking advantage of what his players do well and not being so strict within his offensive system that he's not flexible to that. And for Mahomes, I think part of it maybe was his time at Texas Tech in college, but he has an ability to really understand what a defense is doing, where the weaknesses are, and really kind of lay the ball in those spots and expect or hope that a receiver will adjust and be on the same page as him. We see it with Travis Kelce over and over and over, that Kelsey's running one route and Patrick finds a little bit of time, he waits, and Kelce finds the soft spot in the defense and they let it go. Or Mahomes, I even saw it with DeAndre Hopkins when he just joined the team. He laid one, and It was not exactly as it was designed, and yet Hopkins was able to adjust and make the play. So when you have players like they do in Kansas City and a quarterback in Mahomes that's able to adjust like that, it's almost unfair because you can have the perfect defense, but if these players are able to adjust on the fly, there's always a weakness within it, any defense. So there's holes in it, and you can't cover everything. So they just do a great job of exploiting that, and it seems like they do it the best when the game's on the line and they need the plays the most.
Is there anything in all the tape or all the games that you've watched with Mahomes? Is there anything you think that's actually a defense can look to like, oh, he's a little uncomfortable with this?
No, I don't. I've watched him a bunch. I think it's funny because I was just talking to Jason Garrett yesterday, the former head coach of the Cowboys and a close friend of mine. We were talking about this game and talking about Mahomes. And I having watched a lot of film on him, having covered a lot of his games, I don't know if there's anybody better in the league right now as far as seeing the entire defense. It's easy to say Patrick Mahomes, arguably the best quarterback in the NFL, but this guy, which is far different. That's a different statement than saying this guy sees the field better than anybody. I watch a lot of quarterbacks. I see a lot of them that I don't know that they really understand coverages, or they really know what defender could have taken that throw away, or they'll fit a ball in, and I'm convinced they never saw this defender and they just got fortunate that guy didn't make a play on the ball. But with Mahomes, I think he sees it all. I think he understands what the defense is doing. I think he knows where the players are on the field, and he delivers it accordingly, and which is a real compliment to him, because I don't know that quarterbacks, the way that they are trained these days, I'm not convinced that many of them really learn defenses. I think the approach to offensive football and playing the position has changed over the years. And when you find someone like Mahomes, Joe Burrow stands out. There's others that that they know exactly what they're seeing and they're delivering the football where it's supposed to be.
Did you know, like over your years, you'd be like, okay, look, I'm good, Hall of Fame, the whole deal. We've got all these players, but like this is something I noticed defenses think I'm uncomfortable with. Was there one thing that you felt like this is how defenses want to force me to play?
Yeah, not a lot. I think in general, not directing it at me. I think what they wanted to do against us as a team, one, they wanted to stop Emmett, of course, but within the passing game, so much of what we did in the passing game was timing based. That teams that came up and pressed our receivers, pressed Michael Irvin, Alvin Harper, did not give them free access off the line of scrimmage. That, we could still beat it, but it wasn't as seamless as if they were playing off coverage and we're just running our play action and throwing the skinny post and the comebacks and things like that. They would want to come up and challenge these guys a little bit. We didn't get blitzed a lot because I didn't hold the ball very long. And teams that did blitz, they likely were not going to get home. And then they were going to be exposed on the back end in coverage. So we didn't face a lot of blitzes as a result of that. And then also, as we continue to have success, we saw more and more teams wanting to come up and try to be disruptive at the line of scrimmage with our receivers.
You also, obviously, as you point to, like the Emmett part of it, especially just the way the game was played. We've talked about this in the past, too, is they may go like, hey, the first thing we need to do is try to find a way to contain this offensive line and contain Emmett. And that's something, I grew up watching, going like an NFL team can just rely on the run and go all the way through the playoffs. Saquon adds an element to an offense that we can talk about Adrian Peterson getting that team to the playoffs. That wasn't very good. Derrick Henry's certainly had some huge years, but this Saquon stuff with this offensive line on top of everything else, it feels like just an old school offense that could go, if we don't like what we have up in the passing game, if we don't like our matchups, if Hurts doesn't feel comfortable, if Hurts isn't all the way healthy, like we just turn around and hand it off to Saquon and still have a chance to win the football game. This feels like something we're just not used to seeing anymore, Troy.
We don't see it as much. I think the pendulum is swinging back to the middle. I think we are seeing more teams are more balanced offensively. We went over a decade where the passing game was paramount. More and more teams were going to the spread and throwing the football. We saw, in last couple of years, running backs were there wasn't a big market for them. They weren't getting paid. I think that's starting to change because of what happened this year with Derrick Henry in Baltimore, and then of course Saquon with Philadelphia. But yeah, there's no doubt that Philadelphia, they're built a little bit or a lot like we were during our success. The ability to run the football. I think that people say, well, we didn't throw the ball, that we were a running team. I would say that we were a running team, and we threw the ball as well, if not better, than anyone in football. There were a number of years where we were number one in yards per pass. So we didn't throw it as often, but we threw it really well when we did. And there are other teams that are like that. And I think Philadelphia falls into that category with the weapons that they have at wide receiver and their ability to throw the football if they get those looks. But to be a physical offense and a big offensive line like we had, that's a good formula for winning, to go into a game and know that no matter what the defense does, we've got an answer for it. And I also feel that with the offensive line that they have and their ability to run the ball, it permeates throughout the entire organization and within the locker room that it's hard to be regarded as a physical team if you don't run the football. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to be physical if you're constantly in pass protection. And I think that when you're regarded as a physical offensive front and a physical offense, I think then defense plays into that. And we've seen that in Philadelphia. We've seen that over the years in San Francisco with their ability to run the ball and how physical they play then on the defensive side of the ball also. And we were that way. We were a tough physical defense, but it was all built around a real physical offensive front.
I wanted to ask you about the Hurts part of this because, 2 years ago when this matchup happened for the Super Bowl, like you go into that next year, like, okay, let's rank the quarterbacks because look, I'm obsessed with it too. I do it too much, but it was pretty much understood. It's like Hurts number one in the NFC and then everybody else. And whenever that happens, I'm like, all right, are we already there with Hurts? Is it definitive? And whether it was the injuries last year, the great start and then falling apart, because I think he was hurt last year. I think these are real excuses. He obviously missed some time this year. But no one's ever saying that now. It's not this undisputed NFC belt for the best quarterback with Jalen Hurts. And there's definitely numbers, and you just watch and see, like, there's areas of the field that he's not going to attack. So there may be less of a priority to defend the entire field, specifically the middle, when you're going up against the passing attack with the Eagles. Is there something that you see, a more educated eye on all of this, where as good as Hurts is and the weapons and how they can put up points, and they've been rolling here again, that there's a limitation with him that is it exploitable or is it does not, maybe it doesn't even matter, Troy, because here we are in the Super Bowl with the Eagles again.
Well, it matters, I think, but I believe that there are, regardless of whoever the quarterback is that we talk about, all quarterbacks have some level of weakness. Whether that's if you get pressure on a quarterback and they don't have time to set their feet, you're going to struggle. So there are those elements. I think I go back to we had Philadelphia at Tampa Bay in the postseason after Jalen's first season as a starter in Philadelphia, and it was not a good game for Philadelphia. It wasn't competitive at all. They were not very good on offense. They didn't take advantage of some of the looks they were getting from Tampa Bay. And I talked about those things in that broadcast. And then the very next year, they looked like a different group. And the reason was because of Jalen Hurts. So he had put in an enormous amount of time. And I can't say that I saw him put in the time. I can't say that he told me he put in the time, but you can't be where he was in January and then the very next year be as good as he was without really putting in the effort. So I always had great respect for the time he put in to get to where he got. And they've been a different offense since. Now this year they started leaning back more on the running game and for obvious reasons, but I like what Jalen's been able to do. I like the progress that I've seen from him from when he first took over. And, he'll continue, as all quarterbacks will, continue to improve and work on some of the things that he can get better at.
I always like asking you guys about the production meetings, the access. I mean, this is something you've been doing a long time. When's the last time that you were really impressed by something a coach said about their approach to that upcoming game?
Boy, I haven't been too impressed over 25 years of broadcasting with that, but I've been impressed with a number of players. I will tell you, coaches in general give you a lot of coach speak, and there's not a lot of substance you come out with. There are some coaches we talk to that are pretty transparent, at least with me and our group. But the guy who stands out this year as far as a player goes, it was the most impressive that I spoke with this year was Jaden Daniels. I mean, he was amazing, and we had him week 3, and the first 2 games he had played well, but there were a number of things that you said, wow, he's going to have to be better in these areas. And then we had him. Then we visited with him, and I'd never talked to him, so I didn't watch him much in college. Didn't know anything about him. Had never heard him interviewed. Nothing, and had just watched him on film for 2 games. His first 2 games as a pro, and then we talked to him. I was blown away. Absolutely blown away. I said,
"What was it? Give me a couple examples where you're like, okay,
he
this
just
is different."
was really smart, bright-eyed. You could tell he was really well raised, and you just as soon as we started talking to him, there was this energy that he exuded, and you just said, "This guy's got it. He has it. Whatever that it is, this guy has it." And I just remember when we got done, I said to Joe, I said, "This guy's amazing. I mean, this guy's the real deal." Now he'd only played 2 games, and it was kind of up and down. He had done some good things, did some things that weren't so great, but so it wasn't like I didn't have him in week 17 where you got this whole portfolio of a season, and you say, "Yeah, of course he's." But he's an impressive young man, and I will be shocked. And we've all seen it. A guy comes out of the gate, has a great start, and then we're wondering what happened. And we could name some of those people, but I'll be shocked if Jaden Daniels if we're not talking about him like we did this year, every year of his career. I think he's phenomenal.
Great answer. I also put you on the spot there a little bit, so I knew that we would get there, but I figure your life in football, like rarely are you listening to a coach where it's like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do all these different things. But you gave us a better answer there with the player. I didn't even mean to do this, but I maybe I'll just ask because it's been so topical this week. I like, as an aside, and I've told you this before, I like when you, maybe this sounds wrong, I like when you're negative on a broadcast. I like, okay, like I think it's kind of gone. And as a big NBA guy, I think part of the deal is partner with the league. You got to be positive about things all the time. And I just appreciate those honest moments with you, whether it's a quarterback that I'm kind of on the fence with, or maybe it's a quarterback that I'm hearing the way you're talking about it. It's like, do I need to take a better look at this? I like those frustrations because I feel they're very human and I feel they're very honest. And I know probably there's some people, like, luckily your resume is long enough and accomplished enough that you can probably get away with it a little bit. But I just think those are important things because so much of it now, because of all the partnerships and the money involved, it just feels like you don't have to tell me something terrible is actually good just because you're on the broadcast. I think it happens too much in the industry.
Yeah, well, let me first say that I root for all these players. I really do, especially quarterbacks, because I haven't played the position. I just know how hard it is, and I try when in my analysis, I try to keep that in mind. I feel that I do. I feel that I'm mindful of how hard the position is to play, but I'm also aware of when a quarterback in particular maybe isn't doing what he should be doing or playing at the level that he should be, or I've been there, I've done it, so I know what a hard throw is, I know what an easy throw is, I know what is expected of that position, and I hope to be able to carry that into all positions, and really I've never been a guy who's been able to just kind of say something if I didn't believe it. I just can't do that. Now, it doesn't mean I'm brutally honest all the time. I mean, no one is, but I'll try to answer a question and do it in a way that doesn't compromise my beliefs. And as an analyst, I do the same. So sometimes I get frustrated, and that comes out. But I love the officials. I think the officials have a thankless job. There's a lot of people who think that I target the officials, that I'm critical of the officials. I don't feel that I am at all. But if I disagree with a call, then I'm willing to say that. But I want to do it respectfully, because I know how hard it is to do what they do. And I think that even during a time when we have replay assist and we have instant replay, the games are no less controversial today with all this technology and our ability to get calls right. It's no less controversial today than it was back when I was playing before they came up with instant replay. So I was never in favor of instant replay. I always felt that the officials did a good enough job. We're all human. We all make mistakes, but that's the road we went. And so now my position is, if it's sometime the week after the game, whether that's 20 minutes after a game, an hour after a game, or 2 days after a game, if we can say, or the league office can say, you know what, that was a bad call, that shouldn't have been made, or yes, that was pass interference, we should have called that. I just think then we've got to be able to do it in real time and get it right. And I know it's television. I know we don't have all day to play these games. I know there's restrictions involved. But, and I said it this last week on a podcast that I was on, that, the league is partners with a number of gambling services, and the gambling is being promoted. Gambling is occurring at record rates from where it was in the past. And we owe it to the fans, and especially for those that are gambling, we owe it to them to get it right, to get the calls right. The league knows that. I'm not saying anything that they don't know. And by and large, I think the league does an amazing job. So I would never want my opinion, if I disagree with something, to reflect poorly on the league as a whole, because I do think that the people in charge, starting with Roger Goodell, I think that he and they do everything they possibly can to maintain the integrity of the game and make sure that it's being played fairly, and the competitiveness and the field is balanced.
I wasn't going to ask you this, but I think I'll stay on it, and then I'll finish here, because I think you do just a good job of being honest about it. The Brady conversation about his role with the Raiders and then having the job that you have. How do you feel about the criticism of having those two roles?
I don't know exactly what the criticisms are. I know what the league has done as far as the Brady rules and what he's able to do and what he's not able to do. I find it interesting that, he had been restricted to go into club facilities all season, and now the biggest game of the year, all of that was, taken away. Now he has full access. So I don't know what the logic is in that, but there was a time years ago when I was involved with a group that made a run at an NFL team. And I reached out to my boss, Eric Shanks at Fox at the time, and asked him, hey, here's what I'd like to do. I want to be part of this ownership group, but I'm not going to move to that city. I'm not going to be active day to day, and I want to continue to broadcast. Is that going to be a problem? And he said immediately, absolutely not. Now, obviously, the group I was involved with didn't get the team. But what Shanks told me then, the only real problem would be if that team were to make it to the Super Bowl and we were calling the Super Bowl. So that becomes a bit of an issue. And it would if Tom were calling the Super Bowl and the Raiders were in that game. But beyond that, is there a big conflict? I don't think so. I don't think there is. But I think that, let's just take this hiring cycle, for instance. All these GMs, they should anyway know these various coaches. But when you're an analyst, you get a chance to interact and see these coaches a little bit more. So Tom, knowing him, had done his homework, so he had a better idea of what he thought the Raiders should be looking for, or what people he thought they should be interviewing, based on his year's worth of broadcasting and interacting with some of these coaches.
I want to talk about 8 Beer. I know that you have been investing in this in a while, and I got to tell you, Troy, very vascular today. So the biceps alone, I think you get some Lee Haney veins going. The biceps alone would be marketing enough for this beer. But again, if you want to check it out, again, it's 8beer.com. This is founded by Troy. He's been at it for a while now. Where are you at now? Because I know you have some new stuff going on.
We're in Texas and Oklahoma. We will stay in these two states through 2025. We'll expand in 2026. What market, we're not exactly sure yet. But we've got a lot of really good things going on. I hired a CEO a year and a half ago. He's been phenomenal. We've continued to build our team. Just like in football, it's about the people. I've got a great team. And more importantly, we've got a great product. It's light beer made right. And what I mean by that is we are totally additive free, and we are the only mass-produced beer that can say that. And which means we don't add any syrup, sugars, sweeteners. There's no corn, no rice. It is a better for you beer, and yet it's 90 calories, 2.6 carbs, and it tastes amazing. So I couldn't be more excited about it. If you're a light beer drinker and you like the taste of 8, there is no logical reason why you would ever drink anything else, because it is the cleanest, best for you beer that's available. Now, if you're not in Texas and you're not in Oklahoma, then you might have to drink a different beer because we're not available in those states. But we will be soon. So I'm really excited, and we've continued to grow, and we'll just keep our foot on the pedal and see where this thing leads.
Next Dallas road trip, I'm in, and I want one of those hats to go with it.
Oh, there you go.
Hey man, enjoy the game. I know it's always a special reminder, as we talked at the top. So I know the New Orleans run is going to be in and out, which is a vet move, and we'll talk to you again soon, man. Thanks so much. So we've got Troy picking Kansas City. I'm picking Kansas City. I could have done 15 minutes on the whole thing. Honestly, I could have just run last year's intro to my pick on Kansas City, San Francisco. So, yeah, Mahomes is good, and I'm scared to death of picking against him. We could talk turnover battles. We could talk that kind of stuff. I'm just excited about this game because I think these teams are awesome. It is a little weird being down in New Orleans and there being this meh kind of attitude towards the game. And I know that sounds crazy because it's the biggest sporting event of the entire year, the number one sport in this country. But why would you have fatigue about these teams just because they matched up a couple years ago? These teams are stacked. There's talent everywhere. It was a really close game. And I think another important factor in this whole deal is that if it were a new NFC team being here, maybe it's Detroit, maybe it's Minnesota. I mean, certainly you could understand Detroit being like, I can't believe we actually got to a Super Bowl. And now getting over that, like the collective emotion of the week and all the buildup. The best part, like the angle to play, like, hey, I think Philly wins this game because there's so many dudes that just played in this game 2 years ago. They're not satisfied. I think there's a lot of teams in the NFC that would be satisfied and they'd be staring at the Chiefs being like, we're not supposed to beat those guys anyway. I don't think Philly has any of that stuff. They're not satisfied. This is old hat to them. They know the deal. They know the buildup. They probably think they're just as good as Kansas City and feel like a play here, a play there. They would have won this game 2 years ago. So I don't know that there's a lot of breakdown. It's just I'm very surprised the kind of, maybe it's the Luka trade, but the indifference towards the matchup, and it also might just have to do with why I'm picking Mahomes. It's like, Mahomes is just going to win again. Like that's a very consistent, like whatever. You could talk hardcore people that played in the league, talk casuals, whatever you want to do, whatever label you want to throw on the thing. There just seems to be this inevitable of, well, Mahomes will just figure it out one more time. And honestly, that's not the worst analysis that you're going to hear. However, let's dig in a little bit deeper with FanDuelSportsbook.com and some of their options here. One of the bets is a little scary, but it sounds good. It's each team, 1 touchdown, 1 field goal, each half, plus 1,400. It's a little tricky. I feel like that one never works out. Saquon, 4+ TDs. That's plus 9,000. Something to think about there. You start playing around with that. Start looking at the payouts. Pretty massive. I'm going to stay away from the 4+ touchdowns on any single player in a game. It seems like it's not worth it. How about the, I guess I'll just drink now parlay? Xavier Worthy a catch on the first drive, and that first drive for the Chiefs ends in a punt. So you get Xavier Worthy, one catch, leads to a punt on that drive, plus 619. Doesn't happen. Who said egg rolls? There's another Kansas City one here where if you like Kansas City and you are trying to figure out a way to get that number in your favor because they're still -1.5. It's been -1.5 pretty steadily here throughout in all the books. So flip it to Kansas City plus 3.5. Kelsey 4 more catches. Down week last week. Massive week against Houston. Usually you expect he's going to show up in this game, even if he's the primary thing that they want to shut down. Even if you do that, Kelsey's usually good for a couple. Can he get to 4? And now you're playing with a field goal and a half with the Chiefs. That's -143. Again, we're not talking like a massive payout, but if you want to swing the number, that's more about putting the number back in your favor because now you're, instead of land points, you've got a field goal plus, field goal in the hook on your side of things. But we got to do 4 legs. So 4 legs it is. Kansas City plus 3.5. Kelsey 4+ catches. So building off of the lesser payout. Hurts 175+ yards. You figure if they're going to keep up with Kansas City in this one, I don't know that it's like this free for all with the talent on both sides of the defense. But sometimes games just get really weird, wide open. Everybody's scoring left to right. I have a hard time believing the Eagles are in the game if Hurts can't get 175+, and then maybe more focus on A.J. Brown and Devontae winning against the secondary priority for the defense in the secondary, 70+ yards. So KC plus 3.5, Kelsey 4 more catches, Hurts over 175 or more, Devontae Smith 70 or more receiving yards. That pays out at 392, plus 392. That's the play.
You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Life Advice, the email address, lifeadvicerr@gmail.com. Johnny's number one fan, Kyle, hit me
big
up.
Game today.
Well, the Providence one, you were texting me, and I was like, I'm in the middle of something, so I don't want you to feel like you were ignored.
No, that was for Marquette, which they beat 11 ranked Marquette, and we've got UConn today. Big one.
I know. Huskies. This time it's personal, right, Ceruti?
I'm a Connecticut guy. I'm not really a UConn fan. My wife did go there, so I guess I'm rooting for Kyle's happiness.
I love that for me.
Do you guys like that your wives aren't as into a team as you are?
Well, actually, my wife has pretty much decided to go all in on Crichton for obvious reasons, the similarities, and she loves the Blue Jay logo, and she's bought probably half as many shirts that I have. And the Johnny's last loss was on New Year's Eve against Crichton, and that was a really tough time to be in my house. So I wish she would not pick teams. Like, her dad's a Bills fan, her sister's an Eagles fan, and she could just, Patriots are way down on that list, and I don't know. It seems like she's just doing stuff to spite me, but I don't think.
Does she think the Blue Jays a rabbit?
Yeah, I was kind of confused on the obvious connection there.
She's a big bird gal, loves birds, has several pairs of binoculars, a couple of cameras, lots of bird books that I don't know if she's ever read more than the first time she bought them. She's just, she likes to show her love through purchases for the things that she likes. And I can't say I'm different. It's just, she had to pick a team in the same league, I don't know, whatever.
That seems weird. You just picked Crichton as you were on this Johnny's run here the last couple of years.
Yeah, she's a big Kalkbrenner fan. Obviously, what's not to like about that guy? Started the season with 49 points. Pretty impressive. But
this is like an episode of One Shining Podcast.
Sorry,
nowhere.
We got to get our guy Doug McDermott back on. Get her some gear, I guess. To answer your original question, though, Ryan, I think every March it's always funny to me because, like, well, I love my wife; she's great.
That's
But
great.
like, it's like, oh, now we haven't watched the UConn game all year, and now we're just locked in. We got to watch them all, and it's just kind of, as like the diehard fan of me, I'm like, all right, like cool, like we really have to watch this UConn game at 4 today.
That section of America is growing by the year, though. It's just like March Madness, still the best tournament, even though I never pay attention. So
true,
but she's totally on par with America.
Known over 10 years. This is how it's been.
Oh, okay.
It just as like a guy who watches a lot of games, probably shouldn't let it bother me, but it does sometimes.
I love that transparency.
That's the Russillo rubbing off on me there.
Yeah. Like, oh, so now you're into it?
That guy doesn't watch, right?
All right.
Yeah. And then she's like getting all worked up about it. And I'm like, you didn't know who this guy was 3 minutes ago. But okay. Yeah. All right. This is not going to be.
Yeah, but sometimes I think.
After that. Sorry.
Yeah, but as somebody that's dabbled in being like a fair weather baseball person in a way that I never thought, like I would have beat me up. Like the younger version of me would have told this version of me to be like, loser. Like, you don't even remember when Alan Embry, they couldn't bring him in against, it's just like loser 20-year-old versus, older person that maybe has a few more things going on. But yeah, like
my buddies and I always joke.
Go ahead.
We always joke like how, in our late teens, early 20s, like we could literally do a Madden draft off memory, like just like analog style.
Jesus.
And now I'm like, I couldn't tell you who offensive like this. I couldn't tell you who the starting offensive line is on, most teams.
Well, I think most people are like that. I mean, I used to know who like not even the setup guys were. I'd be like, no, they bring this guy in like the 7th. I mean, it was nuts, and it was not impressive, and it wasn't valuable information unless you were working. Like when you're not working in sports and all 6 guys in another team's bullpen, that's not a good use of data storage, right? All right,
but that stuff sticks in your brain, man. I'll tell you, you remember that for life. I don't. It's anyway.
Yeah, right. No,
probably better uses of our time.
Remember how mad I used to get about the depth of the Yankees bullpen. I'm like, then they have this guy, Graham Lloyd. All right. Ozempic breath. Lot of follow-ups. But I thought this one was perhaps the most specific. A few points about the life advice about Ozempic breath. As an Ozempic user, the breath is definitely real. And trust me, she probably knows. You can taste it. The burps are rancid. And trust me, she knows. Dude, I got to be honest with you. Is it worth it? Come on, girl. Size 6, no problem. I don't even know what a size 6 is. It just kind of felt bigger than a 4. 10 would have been, I think, ridiculous. But I'm not 100% sure. Maybe we get IT on that. Anyway, last sentence here. It's temporary. Lasted a couple of months for me. Still on it almost a year later. And the bad breath and nasty burps are gone. So this guy is suggesting a dosing window, perhaps, of a few months where then it goes away. Then some guys just started sending in emails about breath in general. We're like, no, we need to keep this specific.
Man, that would be tough though. If you're like, all right, I just got to give it 4 months. And then around that 3-month mark, you're like, is it going to be today? That's going to be the last month is going to be like the home stretch. Cause it might not, it's just the way it happened for one person, right? If he's like, all right, I'm not saying anything. I'm holding my breath for 4 months. And then like the day doesn't come. It's like every day will be like 2 days. Just thinking about the mental behind it all.
Everybody's body.
It's like counting down days to Christmas as a kid.
Right. Except for you don't know when Christmas is.
It's one of those calendars. It's just different things that smell. It's like garbage can.
Like an advent calendar.
Like rotting eggs breath on the 12th.
Oh, man.
And then when you get to 25, it's just a bunch of mints, crystallized menthol flames. You're just like, we're there. We made it. Okay. Probably not going to make any of those.
That's
all right, let's get
though.
I feel like I'm hurting our window here. So let me pick up the pace. Hey guys, thanks for considering taking my question. Well, consider it. Gym stats: 6'2", 205, squat 325, bench 225, deadlift 300. All right, putting up some numbers here. NBA comp: Ben Wallace. If literally all he could do was rebound and kick it back out. We live in Denver. Awesome live show, by the way. Next time we need to take Kyle around to some of the local haunts. We try to take Kyle. We did Velvet Banjo and we did Herbs. We've taken Kyle to a few spots.
I've been around Denver.
He's no stranger in those streets. We don't have many celebrities here. My wife occasionally sees one of the Nugs players' brothers at a gymnastics class with our 3-year-old son. Okay.
His player's brother.
Congrats. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the email builds a bit. Today was different, and that player actually came to class himself. There you go.
Okay.
Payoff indeed. I was driving home from work when I heard this news and implored my wife to get a picture of the player with our son. She was hesitant, but I told her to start the conversation by complimenting his impressive stat line from the night before and telling him that he dominates the Pelicans. Then say, I don't want to cause a scene or be a nuisance at all, but could I get a pic of you with my son afterwards? I kept pushing and said I'd drive over to class and do it myself, and she felt uncomfortable.
Jeez.
She did mention that his daughter was there with him, but I assumed he'd get an opportunity when he was away from her, pop the ask. The player was quite gracious for her compliments, but ultimately turned down the picture request. This left my wife feeling awkward as she sees the brother with relative frequency, and she didn't really want to push the request in the first place since he was with his family. I totally get that and agree, but I thought the phrasing of the question made it reasonable enough. I'm not sure she nailed the delivery, but nitpicking that wouldn't be a fruitful endeavor. Yeah, actually have her write it out for you and then go over it at dinner. Anyway, my wife is over it. I've done way worse things. She doesn't need to talk to the brother when she sees him. However, I'm curious to learn from you LA star knowers, was this just an uncool thing to do? Should I have let my wife pass up a pretty sweet opportunity that could have been a cool picture in my memory books? And if I am the asshole here, how big on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you do differently? Yeah, you kind of fucked up here. And we could talk about like the picture in your memory books or one that ends up in your phone that you never, ever look at again. Maybe you print it out. I don't know. You shouldn't have done it. Your wife didn't want to do it, and you made her do it, and there you go. It's glad that she's over it. I don't think it's egregious. I don't even know if it's north of a 5, but it sounds like you were a little pushy about it. Sure, it's exciting and all that kind of stuff, but this also means this guy deals with this all the time. And if he's at something like this, a gymnastics class with his daughter, like it could be quick and he could just say yes to the picture. Some people handle it a lot better than other people do. But the fact that your wife didn't want to do it, you kept pushing, you rehearsed the line. You're even asking us if perhaps she didn't execute it to perfection the way it was prepared.
A little
tells me you
delusional.
might be, you're giving us some hints that you might be a little pushy, or maybe you were just pushy in this instance, but ultimately, like, I think you know you were wrong.
Yeah, I think the family's like, it should be like a safe zone, you know?
Kid zone
like,
should be a safe zone.
Yeah, it should be. I was trying to think of a metaphor. I don't really have a good one, but it's like jaywalking. It's usually fine, but if there's a cop there, don't jaywalk, right? You just don't get what you want. Like it's usually not harmful, but you just don't do it if there's something there. So in this metaphor, the kid would be the cop. Just, I think these people, like famous people, are trying to keep things normal in their family bubble, and he probably has enough of it trying to go out to, breakfast on Sunday with his family or whatever. And I think you should just try. Like you can look at it as, what does he have to lose? And the other thing is a normal day with his kid. Like he just maybe he just wanted 2 hours where he can just be a dad and kid out in public like normal. So you don't think of it that way, but you kind of throw the family unit out of that zone when you're a stranger coming up to someone about, hey, I love what you do outside of whatever you're doing right now. And it's not bad. It's just, I think it's just a matter of perspective.
Does who the player is matter? Like if
I think
like
so. Yeah.
Like if this is Jokic, I mean, maybe your wife's in social circles with Jokic's brothers. That would be hysterical. I doubt it. Like, does that matter versus like, the 12th man on the bench?
Yeah, where you're like, you should be psyched anybody's asking.
Yeah,
sure.
So I do think it depends kind of who it is, because some of those guys are like, hey, actually, it would be cool to be asked to take a picture. Like, this is kind of fun. I'm with you, Kyle. Usually, if it's a family thing, I think it's just a hard no all the time. Just leave him alone.
Yeah, I saw Matt
Even
Liner
in public
on Catalina Island throwing a football with his son. And my buddy used to like work with him through not with him, but worked at the same company as him. And he was like, should we go over there? I'm like, he's throwing a football with his kid. Let's not. We were at this bar facing out towards the sand, and they were just on this. So we were watching them anyway. And I was just like, what's the payoff? Hey, we both worked at this company for a little while. We never said anything to each other, but I know who you are. Like, what's the payoff there? So, just leave people alone, I think, when in doubt.
some people get high off of it too. Like, I don't know, like we're a little bit desensitized, I think, just because of like the industry we work in. Like we do, we met a few people, especially, the ESPN days. It was like,
we've been known to rub elbows.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. Although there were some people at ESPN that certainly did not care. It didn't matter what the celebrity status of that person was. They wanted
that guy's still my hero. He was like in the PA program, and every time we had a celebrity or an athlete,
was here today.
His Instagram would
show up. And we're like, is this guy working radio? What's his deal?
Yeah.
And then people kind of were like, is something wrong with the kid? And it was so bold. And this is what I actually admired. It was so bold, nobody even knew what to do about it. And it happened double-digit times, right? Like 20 might be an exaggeration.
Just give him what he wants. I can't get a read on this guy.
But I think eventually somebody's like, what the fuck is this guy? Who is he? What's he doing? I'll never forget was it Liam Neeson when he was around, and there was like an email. It was like, it's very important that people do not ask him for pictures and like leave. We got like the extra leave him alone memo, which didn't happen very often. Because again, there was always somebody there almost every day that was important. And then when he showed up, like then managers were running down to the radio studio to get pictures with him, which I thought was hilarious. Not as bad as when TV people stole our cookies, but
No.
Yeah, I think we are. I think Ceruti's point, we're probably a little desensitized and maybe more along the lines, but you're right. Like some people love it. Like I'm friends with some people that love when they get asked for the picture. It would bother them if they didn't.
For the gram.
I'm looking at some of the game log stuff here. Strother had he had 15 against New Orleans on Monday and then 10 against them on Wednesday. But I don't know. I'd have to look at the date of the email. So I'm just trying to think, like, specific to the Pelicans. Was it
Strother's a guy I feel like the line is like, yeah, maybe.
I'd also think like 22, but went to Gonzaga. Like if it's Michael Porter Jr., I would just say no. It's probably not going to go good.
That's right. There's a lot of interesting brother situations on the Nuggets in the Denver scene.
Yeah, because if I look at the time of the email and then, I don't know, whatever. I think we covered it. I think we're good. Okay.
Yeah. I saw Zach Braff coming out of a yoga one day in New York City when I was visiting my sister, and we let him pass by. And we were talking after, like should we have asked him? I'm like, the guy's just trying to get a sweat in, man.
That guy,
New York City.
That guy, I think, would appreciate it.
Zach Braff?
I think so.
He's one of the most famous people there. I don't know. I feel like he gets bothered all the time.
He was that guy from that show, but I mean, now he's doing T-Mobile commercials, right? And that's
that show, dude. Come on. Scrubs is a great show.
Yeah, I love
that show. Shout out Bill Callahan.
Yeah,
shout out Bill
totally.
Lawrence. Okay. Let's just do one of the old standards. Best friend dating my kinda ex. Longtime first-time basketball comp Earl Boykin stature and game with late career Steve Nash's back issues. Wow. Small and hurt. I dated, parentheses.
Jeez.
Nothing. Well, he said it. I don't know. Nothing serious, just consistent random hookups and honest communication of my intentions and level of interest. Well, you, sir, are a wizard.
That always works. Foolproof plan.
Right. Hey, do you want to take off your shirt? I'm not that into you long term. A woman who recently returned to my mountain town from an island life in St. John's. Don't care if you mention specifics. If you hear it, it was meant to be. Oh, so this guy, we're getting a lot of these lately. I feel like people are like
nothing to lose, guys.
Yeah. Like they know the other person listens or someone in the crew listens, and this has become some sort of Craigslist shit. Anyway, a woman who recently returned, if you hear it, okay, I already read that. Put an end to it finally a few months ago after a couple of years, mostly due to her worming her way in ways that made me uncomfortable. I lost my mom a couple of years ago, and her mom followed a year later. She started using that as an excuse to try to hang out under the pretense and comfort of, and then get sexual, which I found abhorrent. Okay. All right. So, your moral compass is aligned with your direction in life. I get it. So the issue of what I need advice on is this. Around Christmas, my best friend was going through a breakdown bender, spent a lot of time loving and helping, and I thought I lifted him during this time of need. That's an interesting sentence, but I think we got it. She came over after I left Christmas night with, I don't understand this at all. And she came over Christmas night after I left with the emotional swoop, and I guess now they're dating? ! I got to stress I have no emotional attachment to this woman, and my issue with this is far removed from a jealous ex. I miss him more than her, LOL. My issue is she swooped in, told everyone.
Yes.
My issue is she swooped in, told everyone that would listen that they were together, didn't leave for a month ever, and my boy is just following along. Even after I told him exactly where I was at, my feelings, and what I had a problem with, and he pressed back and said she was overstepping, wasn't like that, and he was effing up. My philosophy is not your girlfriend, it's just your turn. Wow. Really letting this guy have it. And he adamantly agreed, though. All right. Behavior after ain't tracking, though. He's closing up the same box he keeps getting in. And I'm concerned about a friend I love repeating. Oh, comma, should have said it. And I'm concerned about a friend I love repeating the same destructive behaviors and patterns. I see both of them several times a week and become distant with him because of my feelings. I'm not sure how to proceed. Literally hung out with him and our good friend tonight, and he went to hug me as I left, and I put my arms around him and was like, nah, ... Hugged our other friend while he left and felt the diss, and we all laughed. I'm a sardonic asshole. They know. Then hugged him on the way out. Ain't the same with us, though. Ain't the same. Even though I'm expressing myself honestly at all times. How do I navigate this? I'm prepared to write him off as I blacklisted others for way less, but the hell if I won't miss him.
I'm so glad you're not in my friend group. I gotta be honest.
That was a tough email.
That was like a drunk voice text email. It just
yeah. I'm just all confused. I don't know what's going on. All right.
Could check the time. Wasn't that late. Man. What are you asking us, man?
Can we get like a summary, a quick summary, just of? So he was hooking up with his girl,
right?
He didn't really like.
He became
she did some
annoyed,
weird stuff because
by
their
her.
moms died.
Yeah,
worming.
And then
did some worming.
And then, I don't understand. His buddy,
worming.
They met on. They just like hooked up one night or something, and got together around the holidays or something. Is that what happened?
Yeah,
and then all of a
Christmas
sudden now
night.
they're like kind of dating, but he still thinks it's just kind of a hookup thing. But now he's catching feelings.
Yeah, I guess he's mad. I think what he's saying is he's mad his friend keeps going back to the well, even though he's telling us he doesn't care about the woman at all, and that he misses his friend. And then you fake hugged him.
Yeah.
What do you
There's a lot of
want?
extra words in this email.
Right.
Yeah. I think it sounded like at the end we came to some sort of question where he's like, should I write this guy off? I've done it before. I'll do it again sort of guy. I don't know. I think that's, I'll just say, if I'm going to pretend you're a serious person, I would say, if you know this isn't going to work and, this girl's going to go do something else, if you're so sure of, and he's going to, break this guy's heart, you just wait this out. It's like Ozempic breath. It's just like, give it 3-4 months and then
another calendar.
Yeah.
Yep.
Try on the 25th and see if they're still together. And you're saying that like, I'm afraid that she's going to have him spiral down into his, sounds like he was having booze troubles or whatever he was using. You can't put that on being with someone else unless she's, going on benders herself. It sounds like you're all over the place and you just don't like it.
Let him bend.
Let her worm,
Yeah,
let him
seriously.
bend. Yeah, it all good.
Like you said some really nice things about your friend. You clearly care about your friend, but maybe just sit this one out. Let him bend. You don't care about the girl. That's what you're telling us. So we're taking your word here. Because I think some people are like, oh, that means he actually cares. I actually think this email is so weird. I believe that he doesn't care about this woman at all.
Yeah.
And if he thinks his friend shouldn't be with her and he admits to you that he shouldn't be, but man, like sometimes dudes just need to bend. And in this case, if you care about him enough as a friend long term, are you really going to start giving him this hard of a time about it? He agrees with you. You said your piece and he can keep doing it. Like, I don't know. I just would not, if there are people like my buddies, my male friends, some of you guys are just way too hard on your other. Like, what's your goal? To get to 40 and have zero friends? Like, there's just so many things that get sent to us where I'm thinking, okay, but if I like the dude and he's a good hang, like, why would I want to cause friction that damages that relationship and perhaps even ends it?
Well, maybe he just is annoyed because he feels like, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate because I'm kind of with you guys, but maybe he feels annoyed because like, hey, I'm giving my friend who I've really helped out in some tough times some needed advice, and he's just straight up not listening to me. And now we're not hanging out, and it's pissing me off. And like, if he doesn't want my help, then fuck this guy. I don't think I wouldn't do that, but maybe that's where his head's at.
I
like
just
it's funny.
Look forward to your "I
Sorry.
told you so" speech. That's it. Like, just look forward to that.
What is that, Kyle?
Just look forward to the "I told you so" speech. That's it. Like, this is if he says, "Guess what? We're engaged." Maybe then you're like, "All right, I've got this thing prepared." But outside of that, this doesn't sound like it's gonna go the distance. Especially if he's just like, "Dude, you're just up next. You're not even like." So maybe he gets his heart broken. I don't like. This is how people learn. Like, there's no class for this. You're certainly not the teacher of it. Like, I don't know.
We've had guys in the friend group that have dated, hooked up with people that were like, this is a terrible idea. And you just kind of, you just let it kind of play its course. I don't, and I was never like, man, like I'm mad at this guy because we're not hanging out enough. Because let dudes be dudes. I don't know. He wants to hook up with his girl. Let him hook up with his girl.
And the new girlfriend phrase, usually guys, it's hard to get that one off the runway. I think they're not really like, usually a couple months in, then they figure out how to get back to doing the stuff that they wanted to do with their friends. Like, I think that new phase, it's like, some people are just, they sleep over once and they don't leave for 2 weeks. And that guy doesn't know how to deal with that. And it's like a learning curve. He'll figure it out. Maybe it's a rocky 2-3 months. And then, Fridays are for friends. And we do stuff every Friday now. Sounds like it's kind of new. So like, he might figure out how to, give you what you need as well. You just got to give him a little time. These things,
I just wouldn't be throwing away good friends because he's going through the headline. He needs a little bit of action.
That's the headline.
Like that's we've talked about multiple times in this pod how hard it is to find dude friends. So I just think got to hold on to those if you got a decent one.
We could have 5 emails from guys next week being like, does this guy want to hang out with me? I just moved to
can I get this guy's
town.
number?
He's going through this stuff, but he's still out and about. Like, there's some people are devastated. You could have Mikey from Swinger situation where you're eating subs on the floor, looking at Polaroids, right? So you should be happy that you're not going over to console your friend in that situation. In a way, she's kind of doing some of that stuff for you. But I am always I don't know if I could ever write this out, but like the tier of standards, like the standards that we hold people to depending on the relationship. The irony of like what we hope people like adhere to standard wise, the people we know the least, we hold to the highest standards. One tweet, it's like asshole, and you just go,
oh
yeah, but you don't even like, and then it's like, oh, if you knew the person or whatever, and then you like, the more familiar you become with the person, whether it's
it's
anonymous
a conversation.
No, but seriously, like, I guess you could do that. But the anonymous post of like, that's everything about you to the family member where your just standards are like, I have no choice. Like, I can't pick my family. This is what the deal is going to be. I'm not explaining this in a great way, but like, I'm kind of endlessly fascinated with the tier of how like the XY axis of actual intimacy of relationship, not speaking sexually. I'm just talking about like how well you know someone and the standards that you hold them to versus the standards. And somewhere in the middle is this guy who's just your buddy who you're like, you know what I'm going to tell you right now as we end this, there's no scenario in 3 years where if you're still friends, you're hanging around and you're like, remember that 3-month window when you were hooking up with that girl where that altered the course of the universe? Like, it's actually not going to happen. How much more time do we have, by the way?
We got time.
Whatever you need.
We have time. All right. I'll do a little trivia. Well, not a little trivia because I'm not gonna drop this. So yesterday, with the trade deadline thing, I ended up not doing anything. So that's why we did the stuff at the top of the show. And for whatever, actually, there's a lot of reasons because usually when I'm like in and out of New Orleans, there's not a ton of free time. So yesterday, before the deadline, I was like, well, I guess if I'm not doing anything, I can just look at everything and then I'll go back and prep later in the day and have it for today and some of the different stuff. So I went over, I saw Chris Long and all the Green Light guys and hung out there for a little bit and they were cooking an alligator. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, it was intense in person. Met Kyle Hamilton, best safety in the NFL.
Your guy.
Yeah, love that dude. Grew up a huge LSU fan. Yeah, I don't know. There's a few other stories, nothing like crazy or anything. But here's what I wanted to share with the audience is that that World War II museum here in New Orleans, must see. I know people Super Bowl week like to party with drugs, alcohol, maybe meet somebody. I like to party with history. And I couldn't even make it through. I spent 2.5 hours in there and I didn't even finish half of it. And, there's some stuff I knew. I feel like my Pacific stuff is a little light. I feel like nobody ever talks about Italy. Basically, a lot of it's Western Europe, what you spend your time looking at. So I definitely have some holes to fill in, some gaps. Some of the stuff was just great. Kurt Vonnegut set up there a copy of the original log of Hiroshima from the flight log, where I guess this is a copy that the pilot who kept the log gave to his children. So there's like 5 copies, but the original, I guess, was bought at an auction and nobody knows where, or maybe people do know where it is, but it didn't say where it was in the museum or anything. So as I'm doing that, and again, I'm starting to be concerned a little bit, some self-awareness here. I appreciate Ceruti pointing that out with me, that I'm not, like, if I get through this self-awareness phase of having none, then I'm worried. But I sometimes don't know if I'm doing a bit or if this is actually who I am. Is that fair, Ceruti?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like, I wanted to go to the museum, but I was like, do I want to tell people that I'm going to the museum? Is that kind of like the funny add-on that guys are sitting around being like, what do you want to do today? I go, I'm going to that museum. It closes at 5. Like, I've always wanted to go. I've never had the window. The window is now, and I'm going. So you would do
complete, like the Instagram picture in front of the museum. Don't tag the museum. Nobody knows where you are, and it would just be like a Churchill quote.
Well, I haven't done it yet.
I almost it out. Figures
you
it
know,
out.
right?
Yeah.
Right. That's advanced scouting. I haven't done it yet. I have the picture. I've selected the picture to do just that. I thought I was going to do it last night. So that's kind of where the story ends. Is I go to take a picture while I'm in one of the theaters, the Normandy Theater, right? And I was like, how can I make this as awkward as possible? And it's already pretty awkward because I was at the gym. I was in a cutoff LSU shirt, which I forgot I packed the one with no sleeves. So I was just walking around all day with no sleeves on, LSU shirt. Forgot the sleeves. And got a hat on. And I was like, I'll just take a selfie, old guy selfie, bad angle, whatever. And just,
looking down,
put the cherry on top of this entire experience. And so the theater screen is behind me. And I go to take the selfie. And then I look at the picture because I can't see the screen behind me.
Oh boy.
And then I look at the picture. And let's just say the picture snapped at the worst possible time.
Not even good enough
symbolism.
for a joke, huh? Yeah.
I don't want to take any guesses. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even worth a joke post.
Not even worth a joke. No, because there was no.
Yeah.
There was no.
Just love the scale of it all. Right.
You didn't look at the picture and go, hey, maybe we do a redo. You just took it and.
No, of course, that's exactly what I did. I was like, well, I have to do another one. But look at people scared. I'm even telling this story. It was a World War II museum, folks. It was,
it's going to be some unsettling stuff in there.
Yeah. So, anyway, Battle of the Bulge, though. Good comeback for those guys. Patton to the rescue. Coming in like Mike Stanton. All right. That'll do it for us on the podcast today. Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week, right? So we're still a little ways away,
yes.
or how are we
Friday
doing
feedback
that?
Next Friday. Friday feedback next Friday. So get your emails in. What is it? FridayFeedbackRR@gmail.com, I believe.
Oof,
that's the address.
Like that. Okay, good.
He's not supposed to know that. FridayFeedbackRR@gmail.com. You can leave a little Yelp review on what it is we're doing. Everybody enjoy the Super Bowl. Thanks to Wargon. Thanks to Kyle. Thanks to Ceruti. Check out our YouTube page. And, of course, subscribe to Ryen Russillo Podcast, Ringer, Spotify.